Okay. So this is my talk. This is the talk a little bit personal, more personal than I used to do. This one is about my experience as both a developer and a manager, and why I switched back and forth from each role to the other, and what I learned in the process. This is me. I am Fernando, but that's just for customs, the police, and my mother. Everybody else calls me Brujo. I was born a long time ago, in 1981. 10 years later, I started developing small pieces of BASIC for Commodore. And then somebody got me a very good computer, and I started with QBasic. And it took me another 10 years of continuous learning as a child, but still to start working professionally. As soon as I finished high school, I started working as a Visual Basic 6 developer. Then from that, I moved to .NET, and finally, I got to Erlang. And if you're wondering how do you jump from .NET to Erlang, I will tell you in this talk. I jumped from .NET to being a tech lead, then I dropped everything, and then I started all over again with Erlang. I am a computer scientist from University of Buenos Aires, where I learned many other things, mostly related to software development. I am an open source enthusiast. I have a community of friends with which we maintain a lot of open source projects, and I contribute to many others. I think that's the way to go if you want to be a successful developer. I also train people in Erlang in particular, but also in software development in general. I write my blog. I have two of them. One is slightly more popular than the other. The first one is Erlang Battleground, which is a blog based on Erlang. And another one is Tech Lead Talks, which is based on my experience as a tech lead. I do like walking really, really long distances. I am a father, and when I have time, which is not usual, I organize games and stuff for people, like on the open, like on the streets and the subway, etc. So, what I will talk today, my career path, it looks like that road. I started as a developer just for fun. Then I progressed and started earning money for developing programs. But as soon as I became really good at my job, I was promoted to team lead, then tech lead, then software architect, and then I was kind of the CTO of the company. And I quit, and I went back to being a developer again, but in a different technology, as I said before, this time in Erlang. I joined the company. I started working as a developer, and eventually, I again became very good at what I did. So good so that I was again promoted, and that again I was promoted to CTO position, straight up this time, and I spent 2 or 3 years being the CTO of Inaka. You can read about that in my blog. But basically, after a couple of years this time, I quit again, and I am a developer again right now. It's a very winding road, and I did many changes. And in those processes, I learned many different things. Some of them I will teach, or I will try to share today. The first one is that it's something that I have on my mind a couple of years ago. To me, the world seems pretty straightforward. You either want to be a developer or you want to be a leader, and you eventually are a developer, you're working as a developer, or you're working as a tech lead. If those don't match, you are unhappy. If those match, you are happy. But the world and the reality is never that easy. It's more like this, where yes, you are kind of a developer, but somehow you are also managing people partially. You're never sure what your position is, and you're not unhappy just because you are in a position with more management roles than the ones you want, sometimes you are kind of happy, and sometimes you don't even know what you want, and sometimes you don't even know what you are working at. Maybe your company has no roles defined, and every time they need something, anybody can do it, and that may turn out to be confusing. And I think this reality is not good for the developer, and also it's not good for the company. I will try to tell you why. So, in general, many companies, at least most that I knew, they don't have a defined career path. And I'm very honest here. The first time somebody told me to create a career path for my company, I was skeptical. I thought that will limit us. We will not be able to grow on our own, right? Once you set up your path, it will be impossible to move away from it. And that's not true, especially if your career path is simple or flexible. But if you don't have a career path in your company, the problem arises when you need to ask this question: what does it mean to grow there? So you are a developer, you became an excellent developer, and then what? If you don't know, if your company doesn't know, the most likely scenario is that they put you in a leader position, because, I don't know, that's kind of scaling within a company. And so if they do that, that might not be the path you want to follow. And that happens because there is no defined career path. Neither you know where to go, how to grow in the company, neither the company. The company doesn't know where to place you according to the value they think you have. And it's all with good intentions, but it may end up being super stressful, and it may hinder performance on the developer, on the company, and also on the relationship between those two, which is what happened at my first company. So the first lesson I want to share is have a well-defined career path. If you are a developer, when you are in an interview, ask for it. Ask the interviewer, okay, yeah, you are hiring me for this position, but what will happen if I want to grow within the company? If it is, if you want to promote me, where will I be promoted to, right? Ask for a career path and get them to think about a long-term view. Also, if you're a developer and you are already in a company, ask your manager, ask somebody else, and check what does the company offer as a possibility to grow within it. Maybe also ask yourself, what is your desired career path, and check if those two match, because otherwise eventually you will get to a point where you don't want to be doing what you're doing, and that's terrible. And if you own a company, if you manage a company, invest some time. Use some time to define the career path. You don't need to create a new one and push it. Just define what you currently have and ask yourself, where will my employees be in a couple of years or next year, or when we grow from the size the company has now to double? Because you will need something there. You can have career paths that are purely individual contributor based. So each contributor has his own career path, and they move from whatever, junior, semi-senior, senior, etc. Or you can have career paths for the whole company where, leadership, and they grow up in the company graph, right? Whatever, maybe a combination of both. Where at Inaka we had a combination of both. We even had that concept that any individual contributor may be in multiple places along the career path at the same time. That was not the problem for us. But if you don't know that, if you don't know how growth is reflected in your company, it will be impossible to answer the question of what happens when we grow properly. So that's lesson 1. Now let's go with another one. And this one is, say, all right, career path or not, eventually you are promoted to tech lead, right? You were a developer until yesterday, and now you got a promotion to lead people. First of all, even if your the card you hold for the company changes the text, and from one day to the other you moved from developer to tech lead, that the actual change won't happen overnight. It's not like magical. You don't just become a tech lead. It generally has a process where you become less developer and more tech lead over time, until one day you find yourself and you say, all right, I'm not a developer anymore. Even if I had that title, in my second company at Inaka, I had my title of CTO for a year before I recognized that I actually was a CTO. In my mind, I still was a developer with some extra roles. But eventually you come to that realization. And when that happens, you won't be prepared for it, because it's something that nobody tells you how to do. My first big wall, the first big wall that I hit both times that I became a tech lead, was to find out that I had no training for that role. I had to wing it. I had to learn on the road, and that's something that doesn't happen for programmers. Yeah, you can be self-taught, right? You can read tutorials, you can practice online, you can learn with friends, etc. But you have you have like a path to learn how to write programs, or how to create software with a language or with a framework or with a tool, etc. For leadership, it's not that easy. In general, there are no good ways, particularly not free ones, to be ready for this. So my second lesson, both for the developers that either are tech leads now or are on the road to become one, and for the companies that promote people from developer to tech lead, is invest time in learning. For the companies in particular, I know companies send developers to conferences or pay for books or give them time to learn new languages, to try new tools, to even apply new software developer methodologies. That doesn't happen in general for project managers, for tech leads, and of course not for CTOs. While I was a CTO, I was going to conferences, but they were Erlang conferences. Like I was still going as a developer. So my lesson here is that it needs to be some investment there, so that the person that is assigned to a manager role, a tech lead role, can use their time to learn how to do that job well. But you will ask, yeah, but what is it to learn? What do you need to learn to be a tech lead? Many things. And I will list just those that I know for sure that you need to learn. But there are many, many others. In particular, I will tell you these ones. These ones were things that I learned as a CTO, because as a CTO, I had the chance to determine in which things to invest my own time, and I actually invested it in learning these kind of things. So the first one is how to talk to another individual. And it seems crazy, right? Everybody knows how to talk. But if you have one-on-one meetings, you want those to be really productive. And if you're not a people person, or if you don't have enough empathy, and that is not a bad thing, it's just something that you have to learn how to improve, those meetings will be terrible. And on one-on-ones, in my experience, there is no middle ground. There are no so meetings. Those are either excellent or terrible. And you don't want terrible one-on-ones. You want your relationship with each of your individual contributors to be bad. So you have to learn how to get the best out of those. And of course, you have to do those meetings. Those meetings are crucial. It's not like you can be a CTO without ever talking one-on-one with people. So that's one thing. The next item in the list is managing crisis, because as soon as you become a leader, people will expect you to solve every single problem. Even when the way you solve it is by getting people together to work on it, that's fine, but you are in charge. And so you have to deal with that. Some people, and in front of a crisis, they just stress out or just don't function well. Learning how to manage yourself and deal with that is very important. And it's something that can be learned. It's not built in. Then another one that to me it was easier because I am also a trainer, but I have to understand that I needed to invest time in this, which is mentoring. As a tech lead, you are supposed to train people, especially newcomers, but also the experienced developers. You have to lead people to build the systems that you have on your mind, because you will not be coding anymore. You have to transmit your knowledge to others. It's rewarding, but it's something you have to learn to do right. Then, of course, related to all these things, eventually you have to give feedback. You have to tell your employees how good they are, what's their performance, and how awesome they are, right? And you have to do it right. And you also have to criticize correctly and positively to get the best out of everybody. Again, that's not easy, but it's possible to learn that. Of course, you have to learn development methodologies. You can probably choose one for your company, depending on your position there. You are probably the one that will decide how development works in your company. So you have to learn what options you have. And investing time in that is good, even if you are not a tech lead. If you are a developer, it's also good. Of course, you have to learn how to define career paths, as I said before. And of course, and this is really tough, you will probably be involved, even if you're not if you have a human resources department or whatever, you will certainly be involved in hiring and firing people. Hiring people, maybe it might not be that hard. Running proper interviews is a whole new subject, but it's not emotionally hard. Firing people, it's really hard, and it's something that you will eventually be involved in, and you want to be prepared for that. So investing time in learning that kind of things is also important. As I said, conducting interviews. Diversity is something that's always around us in this line of business, and it's not as easy as hiring women. It's much more complex than that, and it's something worth learning, if not for other reasons, just to be a better person, right? A better leader and a better human in general. And most likely, as the face of your company, or as the technical face of your company, you will need to be speaking in public. And that's something that can be super terrifying for people. So improving your skills on that is also a good investment. As you can see, everything here in this list has its other side. As a developer, you don't need to learn maybe the same things, but knowing what you will expect from your manager, it's a good thing. I recommend you, developers, to learn a little bit about these kind of things as well. And the next question is good. Where do you learn all this? There are when I try it, because the second time I became a leader, I decided I wanna. Since the first time I didn't like it, the second time I decided to invest some time in learning, and so I Googled it to see where I could learn from these things, where I could get resources about this stuff, and it was not easy to find, but there are many other people that did the same thing. They Googled, they tried to find resources and they couldn't, so they created their own. I like to think that I'm one of those, but there's people that has contributed much more than me, like my personal hero in all these things, which is Oren Ellenbogen. This guy runs a mailing list, which also has a website, a book, and a Slack community. It's called Software Lead Weekly, and if you're ever close to be a tech lead, you have to subscribe to that mailing list. Every Friday you will get 10 links. From those 10 links, on average, 5 are indispensable. They are amazing and accurate and up to the point, and Oren always writes a little summary of those, so you know which ones you want to look. It's really cool. Then you have Rance. Rance is a very famous tech lead, one of the most famous in the world, and he runs Rance in Repose, which is a blog. He has plenty of books written about it, and he also has a Slack community that is massive. It's like I don't know, but it's hundreds of people there. I know for developers, hundreds of people is nothing, but imagine that those 100 people are CTOs, project managers, tech leads in companies like Netflix, Amazon, Slack itself, etc. So you get, at least you get to know the community of people like you, which is not something common. And also the blog by Michael is amazing. It's always important to be reading that one. Then you have Marcus. Marcus is a guy that is it comes from a different background as other people. He was a developer, but he's more like he feels much more comfortable on the leader side. And basically, he has a blog. He wrote books. He has you can find him in the other Slack communities. He runs a website, and he does mentoring a little bit for free, but then you have to pay. He has videos on YouTube, etc., etc. It's like an all-star tech lead trainer. Camille was the tech lead of Rent the Runway, and she writes a blog. She wrote, I think, 2 books, and she's particularly active on Twitter. And she's a really smart woman, and also a very nice writer. It's a pleasure to read their articles, and she knows a lot. And finally, a friend of mine, Yegor, he's a Java developer that doesn't want to be a tech lead, but he kind of is, because he has his own company, but he doesn't want to have positions in the company. But every blog he writes, you can tell that he's leading that company, and you can learn a lot of how he is doing that. So there are many scattered resources, but the possibilities of learning are there. Now, let's talk a little bit about what is hard about being a tech lead. Because, as I said, every time I was a tech lead, I ended up quitting, right? And becoming a developer again. So what happened? What's the difficult thing about being a tech lead? Okay, I will tell you my list of challenges that I faced, and I will try to be as objective as I can, but of course, my experience will permeate on this list. So bear with me. This is my talk. I'm sorry for you. So the first one is, of course, you are a tech lead now. You have a new level of responsibility. You no longer are responsible only for writing a piece of code and making sure the test passed. Now it's you don't get to get away with hey, that's not my code, run a git blame, it's not me, right? Or I never touched that, that's another subsystem, not mine. That kind of things never happens again. Sorry. You are the one responsible for the systems where you work, and that means you get to be the face with the client, with your users, with your boss, etc. And you own the whole system now, which is in this way is the opposite as Spider-Man. With big responsibility comes big power. You own a system. That whole thing that you might have conceived in your mind before it all becomes something, is now yours. So it's great. But on the other hand, anything inside it, even the things that you don't like, they are also yours. And your responsibility is to present those as if you are the one who built the thing yourself. It's not easy, but it has its upside if it's if the people you manage are great and the system you build is amazing. Then you have to at some point you have to see, you always ask yourself how good I am at what I'm doing, right? As a developer, even if it's not exactly tangible, you get a sense of it because, say, every single pull request you create goes in with praise, or it's merged without much comment, or if your job was to scale test the system and you got it to run better than expected or as expected, or if you develop things and deploy them in time, etc., etc., etc. That kind of thing you can sort of measure in a much faster way or in a quicker way than if you want to measure the performance of the tech lead. Because to measure the performance of a tech lead, you have to account for how the team that he's leading performs, how the system in general works, and not for individual contributions. It has to be for the whole thing, which again you can see as a half full glass as well. If you are measured by small things, you get small good performance, right? You can be an excellent developer, but you are invisible to the world. And instead, if you're a tech lead and you're measured by the performance of the whole system you're building with your team, then you get enormous recognition. Of course, if all goes south, it will be much worse for you than the developers. But that's kind of the price you pay. And then this one is one of the worst. It was one of the most complicated things in my life as a tech lead. I don't know if I put the title correctly. I'm not sure if it's empathy what I mean, but my challenge here was that at some point as a developer I knew stuff, and since I was involved in, say, writing code or doing code reviews, I could be sure that what I knew was applied to the product we were building. Say good practices, say good code style, using the right tools, etc. As a tech lead, you are much more far away from that. That's developers' world. And so if you know how things should be done, you gotta say that. You cannot simply wait until they are not done the way you want it and then complain. That's bad. So you have to explain even things that in your mind seems stupid and obvious. And that for me was a real challenge. But it also lead me to learn how to do this in my life. And I'm telling you, even if you're not tech leads, if you're just developers, learning these things is awesome. It helps you beyond the world of programming and developing and creating software. So it's a good thing in the end. Then, of course, the obvious one. If you're a tech lead, you will be talking, my friend. You will be having meetings and meetings and meetings and meetings. And there is this kind of approach to this thing. Since you were a developer, when you start getting more and more meetings during the day, you feel tired. You feel like you're not being productive at all. And so what can you do? You can complain about it. You can like be in pain for all the meetings you have, or you can learn how to get the best out of those meetings. And I'm not saying I learned that. I certainly didn't. But I was on that path until I quit. So basically, learning how to conduct a meeting in a way that is productive for everyone and it's not a waste of time, and even scheduling meetings appropriately is something worth learning. And if you're a developer, is also something worth learning, because it will transform something that is a pain for you, that is something that you will complain every time, into something that you might end up I wouldn't say enjoying, but at least using in your advantage. So again, a good thing to learn, a difficult one, but a good thing. And my favorite one, and this one is all positive for me. There is something as a developer where you put yourself into the computer, you choose your Jira task or your GitHub issue, and you start working at 8 a.m. and you work and work and work until it's done. Right? You face one problem, you fix one bug, and that's the whole day. That never ever happens as a tech lead. Particularly if as a tech lead you find yourself one day doing the same thing for 4 hours, you get that feeling that something is wrong. Something must be hiding somewhere, or people are not talking to you for whatever reason, or there is something fishy. As a tech lead, you're generally multitasking. You're jumping from one project to the other. Your mind gets used to keeping context in a corner of it, so that you can easily come back to what you were doing after solving whatever problem the developer has, or the client, whatever the client wants to talk to you about on the phone. And that skill, I think, like for me, it was awesome, and it still is. I can still, even I'm now working remotely and whatnot, but I can still jump in different Slack channels or take care of things out of my specific assignment. I still need, of course, those moments where you have to focus because the problem that you have at hand, it's incomprehensible, but it's not all the time. And being able to multitask is something good. And so yeah, it's a challenge. But again, as the previous one, learning to do it is a skill that will be useful for you, even if you're not a tech lead. And the last one, that's the popular one. If you Google what are the challenges of becoming a tech lead after you've been a developer, you will see that every single time. The imposter syndrome is basically the psychological effect that you get when you think you're cheating others. Because even when you have a card that says CTO there, you know within you that you are not a CTO, that you're just faking it the best that you can. And then you wonder how much long that lie will last. Again, if you Google it, you will see people that went through imposter syndrome for years, waiting every day to be called by their bosses and expecting their bosses to tell them that they are fired because they were not good at the job. While at the same time, if you check what other people is saying about them, everybody says that they are amazing leads. I don't know exactly why this happened. I don't think anybody knows, but I know that it happened to me, and I know why. It was because I wasn't able to figure out how good I was at my job, and until I had someone else to compare with. Let me tell you a little bit about my experience. So I became Inaka's CTO, and I was the CTO of Inaka for a year, more or less, until Erlang Solutions acquired us. That's when imposter syndrome hit me really hard, because my feeling there was that as soon as I joined Erlang Solutions teams, I would be spotted, right? That they will realize that I was just faking this CTO thing. And turns out I ended up teaching them a lot of it was shared, right? I learned from them, but I also taught them many things that I learned as being a CTO just by, researching on the internet, or just by experience or whatnot. And that realization was related to the fact that before I had somebody else to check on, I wasn't sure how good I was. And so I think this happens multiple times, because particularly when you go up really fast and really high on the chart, on the company chart, you get to a point where you don't have others to compare with. That's why communities are important, and having others and knowing others with your same role is a good thing. One may think that the communities are for developers, and you may still be part of the community of your favorite language when you are a tech lead, but you should also join a tech lead community, because that helps you understand your own performance in a way, and probably hopefully get rid of this awful psychological condition. Anyway, to summarize, there are many challenges involved in being a tech lead. Each one of them has its own mirror in something that ends up being actually good, but of course, this kind of role is not easy, especially if you want to do it. If you want to do it really well, if you just want to be, maybe it's not that terrible. But if you want to do your job as a tech lead as well as you do your job as a developer, it's not easy. On the other hand, of course, there are unicorns, right? There are good things. There are actually many good things about being a tech lead. Let me list my favorite ones, so this talk can end up in a cheering way, in an uplifting way. So the first one, you get to define. You not only get to define the culture, or to identify, I would say, not define, but to describe and improve the culture of your company or your team, but you also are required to do so. You are the one in charge of doing that, and that's amazing. That's a place where you can give your team the best of you, and especially if you are like me, who I am super involved in these kind of things. I really like transmitting and fostering good culture on the places I work. It's a really rewarding thing. It's a good responsibility to have. Another one is that at some point, you and your team are one thing, and you are not alone anymore. If it's you don't say, I have to build a whole social network. For those who know me, I have zero experience on front end. I am colorblind. It's impossible for me, but I can do it as a tech lead. So as a developer, I don't get to build to work on and to build everything I want. But as a tech lead, I probably can, because given a team of people that's much better than me in different areas, I can join them in a joint effort and build great things, great products, uh, improve the culture, and etc. etc. So not being just an individual is also good. It's good because the results or the things you can get are much greater than just a developer. Of course, there are amazing developers that can do incredible things on their own. I'm not discussing that, but I think team effort in general gives better results in faster and more complex areas. Then there is the benefit of helping other people grow. Once you're in this role, you get the chance to uh, help others, since you no longer need to develop yourself or to work on the stuff and focus only on your part of the world. You get the chance to look from above and improve the lives of others. As I said, as a CTO, you get the chance to make developers work more happily, and that is super super rewarding. That's an amazing thing. If you do it right, that will give you years of happiness. It's a really really good responsibility to have. And of course, you grow as well, because as I said in multiple times during this talk, there are many things that you learn as a tech lead that are also good as a developer. Every time I quit I left my position as a tech lead to go back to developer, I didn't go back to square one. I already had a baggage of things that I could use as a developer to help my team, my project, my tech lead, anybody else, or even myself, to get better, to write better code, to build better systems. So that thing is also good about being a tech lead. So the lesson here is, of course, enjoy the good stuff. There are plenty of it. And it's important to be able to see it. One thing that was super hard for me was to be able to actually spot these kind of things, because it's much easier for me, but I think it's a general thing, to spot the bad stuff, right? When you see something bad, it covers many other things that are good, and it's good. It's important to remember to spot, to put the light on the good stuff, because it is there and it's worth it. So, final lesson, no more slides. The thing, I think, in the end, the message that if you're gonna get any message from this talk, I would like it to be that you have to find your own path. You have to know what you want to be. You have to, as I said at the beginning, you have to know your career path, regardless of the company for which you're working now. But also, it's important to express that within your company, and if you're a developer, to ask for what happens when I grow, when I get better. And for a company, it's important to have its own path and help developers work this way by training, by recognizing the challenges, and focusing on the good stuff, and moving people through this path. And there is nothing wrong with being a tech lead for a while, and then realizing that you have you want to go back to writing code again, and eventually you become a tech lead again, and eventually you want to write code again, and that's perfectly fine. In each step, you learn more things. And if you keep learning, you will be a better whatever you want. And if you are a better whatever you want, and that thing is exactly what you want, who can be happier, right? It's good for you, and it's good for the company you work for. And if you contribute to others, it's good for the world. Thank you very much. So, questions. Let me put my face instead of the slides here. There you go. Mono, you want to read the questions so I can answer?
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much for the talk. That was hearing. And we have only one question so far. Everybody else, feel free to send other questions if you have them. And yeah, Pablo just asked that Joel Spolsky says, is it meaningless to move people from a position they love and do well to a position they don't like and maybe they are not as good as for the sake of growing? And Pablo is asking if this statement makes sense to you and if you can contribute on that subject.
I think it makes sense. If it's just for the sake of growing, it is, yeah, I think meaningless is the word. The thing may end up contributing to the company, to the developer, etc., but it has to have a purpose, right? If the only purpose is that, hey, you spent 5 years in this company, now it's time to do something else. What else? Be a tech lead? Yeah, another good thing. If you're doing that because as a manager, you see potential in that person, you see that that developer can also be a great tech lead, talking to them and helping them grow and eventually becoming a tech lead may be a good thing. Remember, it's also the role of managers to make developers and eventually tech leads happier. So yeah, I agree with Pablo. I think there was another question, more personal one before. Oh yeah, also from Pablo. Yes, Pablo, I organized games in the subway. It was the Were-Mole Hunt, la captura del Minotopo. So I joined a team of 5 people. We left clues spread around on the subways of Buenos Aires.